So just before the discussion with all the speakers, I think we have Professor Monder Toubi, Professor of Public Health in Aix-Marseille, would like to show 2 slides. Can you come? No? No.
Here. We had informal discussion about the scoping explanation meeting, and I've been proposed to present on 2 slides the feedback I had from my personal experience, direct or indirect contribution to those meetings. And I could say that the number of PICO appeared increasingly to be comprehensive with the theoretical combination of all possible PICO. On the top, you get some aberrant PICO that are proposed. And I give you an illustrative example. You have a product that is in maintenance therapy in hematology, and you are proposed a PICO with a comparator that is for the induction phase. So the trials are different, the design are different, the outcome are different, but this is the comparator. And when you ask what is expected and how can we do that, the response is that it is policy-driven PICO. It is not evidence-driven or clinically driven. And when you ask what is the policy question and what is the rationale for the policy question, it's not your problem. You get a lot of circular discussion with no response to any question, and the ambiguity in scope remain unresolved. I can give you another illustrative example. You have a population that is described and has to be irrespective of the age. And then you have clinical trial in elderly, pure elderly, clinical trial in only children, and then you have clinical trial in mixed population. And the question is, should we mix all the trial, or should we only take the clinical trial in mixed population? And the answer is, it's to you to decide. This is a methodological question. This is not a PICO question. And when you insist, the answer is, look at the guidance, you will find the answer in the guidance. But we read extensively the guidance and we know them, and there are no answers to the guidance. Then look at the state of the art of science, how it's done in the state of the art. And then, because we couldn't, next slide please, because we couldn't find any response to any answer, please, next. So the answer we receive is, it depends on the context. And as we don't know the context, we cannot answer. We need first to have understanding of the full context to tell you how to manage that. Next slide. So it's very shocking because by law, the assessor should know the context. The assessment scope proposal for the PICO survey take into account the evidence proposed by, produced by the health technology developer. This was defined in the law as being the SPC and the clinical overview. Then the assessor, co-assessor are proposed to go further with other sources, the guidelines, input from patient and expert, and eventually ask any relevant information to the health technology developer, which, from what I know, it was not done. I don't know all the cases, but I know about at least 4 out of the 9 that went through this type of meeting. So next. The other element that is striking is that GCA is judgment-free and decontextualized. So GCA process should be context-independent according to the regulation. So PICO, so it's not the case because it's dependent on the context. The second point is that PICO should be driven by policy question, not by the context. If it is policy question, it's not the context. If it is the context, it's more complex than policy question. And from a methodological perspective, the requirement should not be ex post after the submission and the scrutiny of the result of your dossier. Because then we look at the dossier, we don't like the result, and we say, do something else. You open the door to a lot of problems that should not be there. So I would like to say a few things. The interesting point is that
you have to conclude.
Yeah, the meeting is not recorded, and there is no minute of the meeting, so nothing. I'm personally pro-HTA, but not with the current scope, and I have to acknowledge the huge effort done by the Commission for the infrastructure. But the process is not really working, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. So it's a good way to start our discussion. So we have 20 minutes with François to manage the discussion. The speaker can stay where they are, and depending of the question, who is for who? Jörg.
Exactly. I'm just reading 3 questions from the online audience, perhaps, that I have online here. I think 2 of them go to Pierre Cochat, and the last one goes to Michael. So the 2 to Pierre Cochat is from Jade Montero. I'm just reading the question. Are the leads at the new created commission within HAS also part of other commissions, such as the Transparency Commission, so the constitution of this group, perhaps? That's the one. And the other one, currently the Transparency Committee evaluates the medicines by SMR and ASMR rating. How is the PICO assessment output aligning with this national approach? That are the 2 questions to you, and perhaps the 1 question to Michael from Angela Miesbach from Roche.
Maybe we can ask to Pierre to answer to these 2 questions first.
Okay, good.
To remind them.
All fine.
I will answer the second first because I didn't understand the first one. Can you repeat, please? So for SMR and ASMR, based on PICO evaluation, I think it will not change anything because even now we already tried to use the PICO approach. So I really think it will not change, and the evaluation of both SMR and ASMR. I hope everybody knows what are these 2 criteria. Will not change at all. Can you repeat the first question?
And the first one was about the constitution and the composition of this commission within HAS that is taking care of, let's say, EU HTA. How is it? Who is involved and
Yes, it's part. As you remember, there are 2 groups. One group is part of the HAS staff, full-time people working there, and the second group for appraisal is a group of experts. And these 2 groups of people works together. The first one is in charge of assessment mainly, and the second one is mainly in charge of appraisal. And again, it will not change. It will exactly be the same, and the group of people involved in this new Europe system will come from the 2 parts of the committee.
Excellent, thank you. And perhaps 1 question to Michael Bernken, also online, and then we are done with the online. Was there a false positive notification also that HTA thought the product was not in scope, but then it was in scope, because you mentioned it the other way around, that HTDs didn't realize that they were in scope. So was it also sometimes in a case other way around?
It's a good question, and yes, there were a handful of cases where a prospective applicant declared to be in scope of JCA production, but in discussion with the HTA Secretariat, it was concluded not to. It was, for example, a biosimilar product, which by very nature, from a regulatory perspective, is not in scope. But a handful only. There were a few which were identified as not being in scope, but then they were then still discussed with the HTA Secretariat and considered they could be in scope, so for further discussion. And there's also one important aspect, as I just have this point here. It's about the timeline and potential changes in submission timelines, particularly when it comes to orphan medicinal products, which are not for oncology and not ATMPs. If the submission deadline is indicated for, let's say, December 27, that can easily slip. So all of a sudden you are in February 28 and you are in scope. So just to keep that in mind, so those are basically, let's say, yellow ones.
Thank you. Question from the room?
Yep. Thanks for the microphone. My name is Gaëtan Duport from the European Hemophilia Consortium. I'm sorry, Mr. Kocha, because you receive a lot of questions, but my question is about the PICO and the role of the patient you do involve in France for the PICO definition. Do you have first lessons after the first PICOs done in France? And the second question is a question to you, François Houillet. You mentioned a huge workload to identify and select the patients. Is it a full-time job for one employee at Eurordis? Because this year it's just the beginning. What will be the future, and how do you imagine the future? Because it seems to be a huge workload for Eurordis. Thanks.
Who start, Pierre, François? Pierre.
Thank you for your interesting questions. The role of patients is a priority, but it's really variable. At the beginning of the drawing of the PICO, it depends on whether France or the nation is involved or not. I will just speak about France. It's an open contribution to patients. So if the patient wants to contribute to the PICO when France is assessor, it's totally open. This is the first step. And the second step is when we are just investigating the PICO, which has been submitted to us, but when we are not assessor or co-assessor, just in charge of giving some opinion about the PICO, of course, the patient representative who are in our expert group, and one of them is present here, they can intervene, of course, and give their opinion. Until now, unfortunately, I don't think we had a major input from patients, and this is a great question because I would like to stimulate this approach. I'm really in charge of that. And maybe for the O of PICO, the O is very important and very open to patients.
François?
Yes. If I can respond briefly, yes, we have full-time staff, and I had one colleague who had to leave Eurordis to join BCCH, so I think he will do a great job helping Marcus to involve patients in these procedures. In a way, we are lucky because we have a long-lasting experience of looking for patients for the EMS, maybe 25 years. And we are quite good at it, but the time it takes really depends on the people we contact. Some want to know everything before they confirm. And that can mean that even when you think that you will spend 1 hour with them on the phone, it can take half a day on the phone with them. For example, some are not familiar with all the scales that exist to measure quality of life. And when they realize that this can be a question discussed for the PICO, which outcomes, then we have to look for all the information we can find on published articles for all the different quality of life scales that can exist for the condition, and so that they have some knowledge when they join, when they respond to the questions. So it can really take a lot of time, and we have a commitment to do it. Now, if all organizations have the same commitment, I don't know, but this is certainly something that needs to be driven by the needs of the people we contact. There is nothing worse for a patient advocate, patient representative, than to take part in a meeting where they don't understand why they are here.
Thank you. Mira?
Yes, thank you. So when when the European Commission receives the letter of intent together with executive summary, and then this letter of intent with executive summary is sent to HTA bodies. Executive summary contains scientific context of the development. It contains the indication, first line, second line, etc. It contains probably the mode of action of a drug in development, and it contains the summary of what the people should take into account when decided about PICO. So I cannot understand even today how it is possible that PICO choice is only policy-driven and not also context, scientific context-driven. Could somebody explain this to me?
Who would like to respond to Mira?
Yeah,
I only have experience in one PICO, in one assessment, JCA, where we actually have 8 PICOs. And there, my impression is I would not agree that it is primarily policy-driven, but what is, of course, clear, the decision which population you might reimburse and the fact what is standard of care in your country, that's basically, of course, policy-driven. Therefore, I understood that the PICOs which I have seen under this framework, population you might reimburse and standard of care in your country, I found it, in a certain way, it's of course policy-driven, but in this framework, I found it then relatively empirical-based.
Thank you. And you have the microphone, so when you can ask. You have your, yes, François.
Oh, okay. It's not to answer the point, but it's to. I have a question about the evaluation of the process and the 10 JCAs that have started, but nobody speaks about the end date, the expected date of the delivery of these joint clinical assessments. So it seems that we will have, and first member states, if I understood correctly, they have to start to make the report in 2026. So at a time where very few joint clinical assessments will be available. So how is it possible to evaluate the process if you don't have the product available? And additionally, it would be interesting not to evaluate only the regulation till the production of the joint clinical assessment, but till the final step, that is the national appraisal report, to see whether in the end we are able to make the product available, and the final decision to make the product available in a more homogeneous form across Europe or not, if it has an impact. So how can we assess this process without having the products available? So I think it's a question probably to Valentina.
Valentina, you.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Indeed, we start working on the evaluation already in 2026, but this process will...
How is that possible if there is no or very few product available?
Exactly, but what I mean is that I was sharing with you what Commission is doing internally, but of course the final report comes out in 2028, in January 2028, because we do need to give time to the process to get to the point where we can look back and look also in relation to the added value for member states, which is exactly what you mean. So we will have already some processes concluded, and we will look not only at the 3 aspects that are mentioned in the regulation, but Commission will also look broadly at a lot of other aspects, because we are, as I said, I was getting a bit scared by the orange screen before, but as I said, we are working also with the stakeholder network, where we are creating this process together. So we really want that the report will mean something and can trigger also a review of the regulation. So it's really an important deal, and we will work with all the actors involved to make sure that we are really touching upon all these aspects. Then on the PICO question, that's not for the Commission, but I feel like I have to say that policy-driven doesn't mean that it's not scientifically based. I mean, these questions have to respond to member state needs, and Monsieur Cochat has very elegantly said that the consolidation of the PICO is a clever exercise, and member states are really working very hard on this. This is based on the scoping guidance and the experience that was of the past, the experience now under the regulation, but we have also to see and give time to this process, and I think there is openness also on the side of member state too, after we have done some cases, to look back at what was working and how, and to look at how we can refine the process. I mean, I completely agree with you mentioned success, and Michael also, I think I should have mentioned this too on my side, but I mean, we cannot do this if we don't work all together. We cannot do this without patience. Let me just also, since I have the microphone, reply to your presentation, Francois, because first of all, thank you for making it, and thank you for the European Access Academy to give us the opportunity to take this feedback. I'll certainly discuss with the team, and I can commit that we can look at all the points that you made. It's nice that you remember that Commission was always really trying to involve stakeholders since the stakeholder pool that we created in 2018. I feel like, so definitely we should work together on this. This is also in the working group that we have created, so let's bring this to that forum and see. Orphan medicinal products are not in the scope yet, but you have been very helpful for us in our outreach to bring patients into this system. But I want to say that, I have to say that when you take the quote from Ms. Glover out of context, you know, she's talking about broader conflict of interest, broader interest, but I want to remind everyone, and Michael really said, there are a lot of firsts that we are navigating. It's a first, and also James it's the first time for all of us on a lot of these issues. So it's a first also that we have like a 16-page implementing act on the conflict of interest management that we have discussed throughout most part of 2024 with member states that gave a positive opinion to the framework that now the Commission has to implement. So as I was trying to convey also in my presentation, the Commission is a neutral broker here, because we are really applying this framework, and it's not a broader interest that we are looking at. We have created a small cellule in our team of people that are really working day and night on this. This is not a black and white system. It's not all interests are the same interests. So it's not the same as having a share in a specific developer, or being in an executive position for a developer, or being a principal investigator in a clinical trial on that product. Is not the same as having, you know, I don't know, have a family member with some interest, and the implementing acts, they recognize the subgroup needs to prioritize the expertise. The scenarios that you showed are theoretical scenarios, because of course it didn't happen so far that we couldn't identify patients for this work. Actually, we have been quite successful in that respect, not so much with clinicians, so maybe Bernard can help there. But yeah, I felt like we have to work together on this, because you are the ones that know best your communities, and we can work together to improve the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. Also, you have a question for...
Yes, and to your credit,
for Bernard.
The Commission also agreed to create a working group with patient organizations precisely to find solutions to all these aspects. So I wanted to remind this. The question to Bernard, so you mentioned the heterogeneity in access and the difficulty then to discuss the comparator, but in terms of outcomes, did you ask questions on outcomes, and do you think there is the same heterogeneity among clinicians to agree on which could be the most relevant outcomes given the diversity of countries that contributed?
outcome was not a parameter in the question. We wanted to look at access. And so that's not really an outcome question. I guess there will be different opinions potentially, especially if you involve patients, but this just was not the question. So just look, if they have the, and my personal opinion is that probably outcome parameters are more important if a country decides on limited access. Probably not itself, but probably that may be important also if you look at populations. They look at like younger people or at second or third relapse. They're not already putty available in first relapse. I think it seems to be more important in our survey. Outcome just was not the question. So I should probably really underline it was important for us to get contact to the people, not to have a full scope of all answers. But I think it's really quite important, as you also do, really to try to get people involved, to get them informed about the process, and that's one way to do that. And if you ask too many questions, you might lose people.
Thank you. Two very quick questions to Marcus. How do you find your experts for doing the expert hub? And to James, what could you evaluate the percentage of redundancy? How many PICO you can avoid just by avoiding those who are redundant?
Happily briefly start. It's a short answer. The expert identification for individuals is done by the team on the Commission side. What we do is we provide a platform for clinician expert organizations to communicate and just in generally inform.
Okay. James?
And again, it will very much be context specific on the actual indication itself. But to give you an idea, we are predicting around 50 potential PICOs. We're hoping that'll be around 10 to 15 that are actually produced. And our challenge is, one, that the PICO exercises that are published don't give us any insight on how they've consolidated. So how many member states, what were the original PICOs and how do they get there? So we don't quite understand how they define subpopulation, subgroups, etc. In that. And that's part of the challenge, is just having those evidence points to give us a bit of insight as to how we go from, we got 50, but actually it's going to be these 20. Let's focus on that. And that's where the inefficiency is.
Thank you. One final question from the audience.
Yeah, Wim Monder has a question aussi.
Je ne vois pas, il est derrière.
Oui, il est derrière.
So I just want to full-heartedly support Valentina. I'm Wim Goets. I'm from the Netherlands and also a member of the coordination group and been involved in this work for some time. I think, for instance, about the PICOs in explanation meetings, I've also been in one and have followed in the sidelines. You have to be aware that differences between countries can be enormous. And I think the presentation of Dr. Warman showed that some countries really don't have access to certain therapies. So these policy and empirical questions really overlap sometimes. And we have to be realistic that will really cost time to really find that kind of compromise. And I was actually surprised by the member states being very open to consolidation and seeing where can we really limit, because it's also not in, for the assessors and co-assessors, the less PICOs, the better, really. So to be aware that this will cost time, and sometimes you might think, well, why are these choices made? But I have the full confidence that we will get there. So I really appreciate all the criticism, but we also have to be careful on where we go to and that we support this process.
We're happy to end with an optimistic point of view. Monder, you have a pessimistic point of view? Wow.
It was a question to François and to Bernard.
20 seconds.
Yeah. At what time the patient and expert are involved, before or after the consolidation of PICO, or at what time compared to the PICO survey?
My understanding is that they intervene at the consolidation phase, but because it's so difficult to have any feedback from the patients, I don't know when exactly they intervene.
Last.
Well, just now we get questions very early on for the joint scientific consultation, but really I think there's a big gap. In Germany, this year we are getting 280 requests from the GBA for joint scientific consultation. There's a huge gap between what we now have in Germany already, and I think which will also be needed in Europe.
Time for the coffee. Thank you very much to all the speakers and the audience.